What's up guys, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be talking about the Fire Rift base. Alright, so just quickly, this is my current record with my current team actually. So this team is actually pretty consistent, alright, in terms of getting triple S. I know there are some Nat 5s and like Nat 4s which you may not have, but there are definitely alternatives that you can run. Your damage may not be like as strong or like as like consistent or as high. It will be very dependent on runes though, but I think it's actually a lot easier now to get a high score on the Fire Rift. I mean, before they did the change to elemental damage on elemental advantage damage, I was getting about like an average of maybe 4 mil like average. Then once they added the change, it's like significantly higher. I would say like on average I would do between 4.5 to 5 mil. So yeah, definitely much easier. Now as for the mechanics though, I think that's the main thing we should talk about. Every raid boss has its own sort of unique ability. Now for the fire boss, the main one you have to watch out for is fire minion summoning. Right, so you'll see it pretty soon. He'll do it at the start of the fight pretty much. He'll summon a bunch of ads, and you can see the ads are like these crystals in the air. You have to AoE and kill them, otherwise like if you don't kill them in time, they'll sort of charge into your team and just do a bunch of damage to your team. I can usually survive one lot of bombs like hitting my team, but 2 is too much, right? I won't be able to recover. You can see here like my team's almost wiped. I can barely do it. Like it would be more consistent if I had a better AoE setup, but anyway, I'll talk about that in a second. So obviously you want AoE units to deal with that, and then the other standard, like just the standard Rift beast aspects which is like you want your attack power buffer, you want defense break, you want your branding and slow. Right, those are like the most important in order. Right now, he also has another ability which is Fire Sweep. Now Fire Sweep is similar to other bosses. Like a lot of the bosses have a similar skill, just like different element version. But what it does is when you have a turn, it adds 1 counter to Fire Sweep, and this will include violent procs, and therefore try not to bring violent units apart from your healer. The reasons for that is 1, it will increase the damage of Fire Sweep. Alright, so the more turns you've done, the more he'll hit you for. Secondly, if you run violent units, it's actually pretty bad in terms of doing damage for groggy stage, because you might lose your attack power buff, and if you're doing a hit without attack power buff, it's just a waste of a turn. Right, so units can potentially waste turns like that. Plus, you also have a limited number of turns on the groggy stage anyway, so you don't really want any units to hog turns too much if possible, right? Especially like for units that aren't defense breakers or branders. Okay, so apart from that, obviously you just want high single target burst damage, and try to stack a pure elemental advantage. Like whatever the element is, you should be running one that is strong against it. So obviously in the case of Fire Rift, you want to stack water units. So now we'll talk about my team and then some alternative units you can use if you don't have these units. So first off, we have Soha. Now Soha is good for her attack power lead for water units, especially because you should be stacking them, right? Then she also has an AoE on the 3rd skill. 2nd skill is a self heal, like it's a life leech actually. Like so, she'll do damage and then she'll gain health back based on the amount of damage she does. 1st skill is just like a standard DPS ability. Doesn't have any additional debuffs that are relevant to bosses. It does it does a freeze, which is obviously boss is immune to freeze. So I put her in the front line because she has a self heal. To be even safer, you could even put her on Vampire just to help leech life back. Especially because if she has Vampire and she does AOE, it's like a massive return of health. But mine's on a standard attack crit damage attack build. Now, all units in raids, or at least for elemental raids, don't need to be too fast. Okay, so don't stack speed, alright? Especially not on slot 2. At least try not to, unless the unit scales of speed for the damage. You do want a little bit of speed though, so you should be able to get enough from substats, right? You're trying to aim for about 150 to 170 speed. I would say is probably the ideal speed for AoE units at least. You do want your AoE units to have like a little bit of speed, just so that you don't move too slowly and the bombs will detonate, right? If you move too slow and don't kill them. So that's why I built so hard this way. Alright, next up we have my Xiaolin, which is you've probably seen Xiaolin in a lot of my videos already, or a lot of my rune videos, just on a standard attack crit damage attack build. And it's tuned for R5, but it still works in Fire Rift. For Fire Rift, the ideal would be making her 85 crit rate, but mine's on 81 because I'm using Hua lead in R5. But she does a lot of damage with third skill because this scales off harmful effects. So on the groggy stage, that's when you'll be able to do debuffs, and that's where all your extra points are coming from. Because the non-groggy stage has a fixed amount of health, and there's only so much you can get out of it. But a groggy stage, you'll be there for a certain number of turns, and therefore that's your chance to do as much damage as possible, and that will increase your overall score. So this will help you a lot to obtain that. Next up is Twisted Kick, which is a slow, so she can provide that debuff for you, and she also has defense break on skill 1. This is not a 100% harmful effect, defense break, but it's still a decent chance. I think 50% is still okay, and it's just like another instance of defense break that's you can use for your team. She should ideally not be your primary defense breaker, so you should have another unit at least that has defense break, but she can be like a backup, and she has that chance to also land defense break early on, so that's pretty helpful in my opinion, and she does a lot of damage, of course. Alright, next up we have Stella. So Stella is on a speed build for dragons, and of course her third ability scales of speed in terms of number of hits. So you need 220 speed total, including your speed tower and your speed leader if you're running it. You should not really be running a speed lead in Rifts if you can help it. You get a lot more benefit out of attack power, but if you need it to help you move often enough to survive, that's also up to you. But try to eventually phase it out and use attack power lead. Now, as far as the skills are concerned, the main ones in my opinion are actually skill 1 and skill 2. So skill 1 is a defense break, 75% chance at max skill. You can run her without skill ups, but obviously she should be more effective with them. Right, but yeah, you can use her without it if you want. And second skill is a branding effect. Again, you do want harmful effect rates that increases from skill ups, but you can still use her without it if you have to. Okay, but eventually the goal would be to skill them up, of course. Alright, next up we have my Tail. So Tail obviously is in that 5, and not everyone will have Tail, but there's definitely other units you can use instead of Tail, which I'll talk about soon. Right, he's got AoE on third ability, and he's got a large single target burst damage on second ability. So he's pretty good for this boss as well. Alright, next up we have Hua He. So Hua He, not everyone's going to use her straight away. She's actually a pretty hard unit to use because she has high stat requirements. She needs a lot of attack, and as well as a decent amount of HP, defense, good speed, and even the luxury stats would be crit rate, crit damage. I would aim personally to try to get her to about 2k attack total, so about plus 135. Sorry, 1,000. Sorry, 1,250 actually. Sorry. around about that. And then roughly around 1k defense is recommended, and about 18 to 20k HP. That sort of stats can probably even tank frontline, because the Fire Rift boss doesn't really do that much damage. So yeah, she could be in the front if you want. Now her heal scales of attack. So this is the main reason why I like her. So she can heal. She can do a large burst healing as well, while also doing a bit of damage with her third ability. Even her first ability is like not awful. But yeah, the alternative would be to run Colleen. All right, you can still solo heal with Colleen. That is definitely likely. The alternative also is to run Niang instead. So Niang could be your healer, and also she gets elemental advantage against the boss, which is quite nice. But if you're running Niang, you do need to cover attack buff from someone else. Just keep that in mind. Alright, next up we have Tark. So Tark is a unit that everyone should probably already have if they're progressing into raids, or you know, you'll like be soon like building it soon, like for this, at least for this raid, and probably for a lot of the other raids as well. But he's just on a typical attack, crit damage, attack build on Swift. Now the reason I put him on Swift is because he's got very high base speed. Alright, so it's 115, that's very high. And his attack is actually quite low, 714. And that's pretty, yeah, it's pretty bad for attack type, but he still does pretty high damage. But it's just that his scaling is not as good for that. So try to stack more crit damage than attack, if you can help it. But he's just like a single target damage dealer. Does a lot of burst damage, especially with third ability, which is Group Hunt. And Group Hunt also helps you reduce cooldowns on whatever units he brings along when he attacks. Alright, so pretty standard, typical DPS build. Don't make him too fast, because there's no real need for him to be too fast. You don't want to sacrifice damage for that. Plus, if you're using him in dragons, he will want to be like at a certain speed anyway. There's no reason for him to move like faster than Galleon, or even like you don't even want him to move after Galleon, because you want your other units to use their skills first before you use Tark, in case he can reduce the cooldown on their abilities. Alright, so those are the units that I'm using. Let's talk about some other units that you can use as an alternative, and like what sort of roles they provide. Oops, wrong button. Okay, so starting from like the NAF 3s, one of the interesting ones which I personally haven't tested yet, but I feel she has good potential if you build it for Fire Rift, is Sharon. So Sharon has a attack power leader for water. So if you don't have a Soha, you can use this as an alternative. Third skill is actually probably the worst skill in her kit. It scales off defense as well as attack, and obviously her base defense is really bad for because she's a magical archer and she's an attack type. So I would recommend, if you're skilling her up, try to avoid maxing the third skill if you can help it. Okay, so you don't really want the cooldown reduction from this skill. That way he won't use it as often. Okay, second skill is an AoE actually, and it also does slow. So that's pretty nice for the groggy stage, right? For the slow debuff. And then in the not groggy stage, she can be one of your AoE units. So in a way, she can replace something like Soha or Tail. And first skill is Magic Arrow. Now to explain what Magic Arrow does, this will apply to all magical archers who have this, like, because they all have this skill. So what it does is, if you have elemental advantage, you will do a defense break debuff. If you have elemental, if you're element neutral, you'll do attack power debuff. So that's why Adela is used in R5. If you have elemental disadvantage, you'll do one turn sleep. But obviously, you're not going to bring it against an elemental disadvantageous fight, so you'll be looking probably more at the first effect, which is defense break on elemental advantage. So you could probably try to use her and like see how it goes. She's also a farmable unit. Now I personally have not tested this, so you can't don't blame me if it doesn't work. But she is a unit that has some potential based on her kit. Alright, next up we have Yaku. Now this one I can definitely recommend. So Yaku has very high burst damage as well. He has ignore defense, or a chance to ignore defense on Wipeout, which is his third ability. But even if you don't ignore defense and you have defense breakup, he does still do a large burst amount of burst damage. So definitely keep that in mind. Second ability is a max HP scaling damage ability. So obviously Raid Boss has a lot of HP, so this will help do extra damage. So he'll be like replacing probably like Tail or something like that. Okay, next up we have Rigel. So Rigel can be used as like your defense breaker and attack speed slow from his first and second skill. The most important thing I want to point out is the second skill, it attacks random targets. Now if there's only one target, like in the groggy stage, then all 4 attacks, or I think it could be more, but like all of the attacks will go onto the groggy head. And that means there's a lot of chances for it to do a defense break and also do pretty good damage. First skill is just like a standard sort of damage ability, and it does attack speed slow, which is nice against the groggy stage. And the passive it decreases chance to be critical hit, which is quite nice. Just means he has good survivability. You can probably even put him in the front line because of this, if you make him like semi-tanky. Alright, as I said before, you could use Niang as one of the healers. You do want the third skill to be maxed though. I would try not to use her unless she has maxed Dance of Mirage. She also does like okay damage. Now if you're missing like a branding unit, or you want an extra branding unit for consistency, you can use Aega. So Aega, the main reason is because his second skill does branding. Then apart from that though, he's like a standard damage dealer. Alright, next up we have Galleons. So if you're running a sorry, that's not Galleon. So if you're running Niang, you're going to need to cover attack power buff from someone. Galleon is like a typical unit that people will use in that case, or even in normal teams. He still does okay damage with Pirate Strike. Plus he has two defense breaks, one on first skill and one on third skill, so it's a pretty good chance he'll use it. Okay, next up we have Lapis. Lapis is actually a unit that I want to test out next rune removal. I have a feeling that she might be good as a triple revenge build with high damage. And so when the boss hits you with minion summoning, you have a pretty good chance to revenge and then just kill the ad straight away. At least that's my theory. It's obviously not 100%. It's not going to be 100% success like each time, but it has that potential there. Now the reason I would think she's good in here is because her first skill is an AoE. I actually used to use Lynette in raids before they changed the elemental damage, or the elemental bonus damage. And Lynette was able to do it, so if Lynette can do it, then Lapis should be able to do it. Alright, you do need some pretty good runes for it to work, but she has that potential. Plus she's also like a backup attack power leader, so if you don't have Soha and you don't want to build Sharon, you can build a Lapis instead and use her attack power lead. Alright, next one I want to talk about is Ryan. So Ryan, he has a dungeon lead for attack power, again very useful. As you probably hopefully know by now, dungeon leader skills do work in rifts, elemental rifts. Alright, third skill, nothing special, it's like heal block. I guess it helps add a bit of extra damage to your Niang, but in general it's not the main thing that you would want to use him for. The main thing you want to use him for would be second skill. The second skill is a defense break. And assuming you crit, but you should be running 85 crit anyway for any unit that you can use on and you want, like, for any unit you want to use in a consistent sense. Alright, and first skill is a self attack power buff. Alright, you can also use Sigmaris. Sigmaris actually is a farmable unit. Alright, he's got AoE on third ability, and he's got pretty decent like multiplier on second skill, so he can do decent single target bursts. It's not as good as Taeor, but he's a good alternative to Tail. Or if you just need like a second unit that has an AoE, you can use Sigmaris. Okay, some people might use Chow as a frontliner. He does pretty good burst damage anyway, if you put him like tanky with a bit of attack substats. So you can use him as a frontline and like DPS if you want. I would try not to though. I feel that there are better single target damage dealers, but if you need it specifically for frontline, you could consider that. Alright, one unit that people might be surprised on is the Water Monkey King. So the Water Monkey King, he does AoE actually on second skill, so that's partially why, you know, he's okay for it. The other main reason though is that he's got universal attack power lead. So if you're mixing elements like I'm mixing like my Hawaii into my team, then She-Her can be okay in that he can help you know, give attack power to all those units rather than just one element. Alright, now Beth is also another unit that you can use. I actually used to use Beth. The reason that I use Beth is because she has two AoE skills, one on Eternal Scar and one on the second skill, which is Gouge. She does okay single target damage but nothing too fancy. She also has defense break on third skill, so that's a nice small bonus. Alright, Alysha is another unit that you can use. Similar idea to what's her name? Similar idea to Beth. She has two AoE skills, right? Storm of Midnight and Frost Rush. She also has defense break on first skill, so in my opinion she's a little bit better than Beth at least. But you can use both as if you need the like if you need enough units to make a team. Alright, you can also use Filmars as a single target damage dealer. If you put him tanky for Guild Wars, you can actually put him in the front line as well. But pretty like typical damage dealer sort of stats. He also has crit lead, so that's like a just in case thing. You probably prefer to run attack power lead where possible, but if you can potentially scale all your units to run, or like with the idea to be running a attack power lead, right? Assuming you always crit anyway. He also has a defense break on second skill, so that's another reason to run him. He's a good like starting unit. Alright, next up we have Poseidon. Poseidon's actually something that is not probably maybe a little bit underlooked, but he does have two AoE abilities, right? Sweeping Waves and Maelstrom. The other thing that makes him pretty decent is that his third ability, his passive is a universal attack power lead, so you can consider him for that. I think that's the so you can also use the Homunculus. Right, we probably won't be using. Actually, you can use either water or fire. Both can work. Now, if you're going to bring the water one, what you're probably going to be doing is going for probably the reset. Let me just check which one it is. Oh wait, no, never mind. Sorry, I think of the wrong Homunculus. Actually, so you probably go for the like AoE path, right? Or you'd be looking for one. Like you can use Ice Explosion, would be pretty nice, actually, because you'll be killing multiple enemies, and each one you kill will decrease the cooldown. So it pretty much will always be up, or it should be up, as long as as long as he doesn't use it as like on the non, or like any other time other than ads being up. Sorry for the brain fart there. But you can build it towards having like other, more like AoE skills. Like second skill, you can choose to have an AoE version. For first skill, you can do actually like the bottom path. I think is better because this one attacks all enemies, right? So there's another like. Both paths can have AoE, so but that bottom path is capable of doing like all skills as AoE, and that means he can probably be your solo ad clearer if you're going to build it that way. That's an option. Okay, now let's talk about some of the other units in other elements. One that will be maybe a little bit of a it'll be a little bit more interesting is actually the Dark Lich. If I can find him. Ah, here he is. So the reason to use Dark Lich is because his his passive, he increases his attack power whenever someone dies, and obviously you're gonna be killing ads, right? Every couple of turns. When that happens, this will be max, right? He will do more damage, and that's nice for the groggy stage. Plus, he only has 2 skills, so you know that it's gonna be like a pretty good chance that if you're using one of these. Second skill, similar to Regal. If it all goes into one target, it does a large burst damage. Plus, it also weakens defense. So he's got the debuffs, and his passive grants him a lot of extra damage. And then a couple of fire units that I want to talk about. Obviously, Zyros is a good one. If you happen to have Zyros, he's got 2 AoE abilities, right? So that's pretty good in itself. Plus, he's also got universal attack power lead. So if you want to mess around with like different elements, like if you're running like Grego and like another it's a bunch of water units and then a couple of fire units, then yeah, your attack power lead universal is what you'd be trying to go for. Obviously, Perna is good for Rifts, like Rifts 2. Obviously the elemental advantage is not there, but it still does pretty decent damage, and you're also adding the 44% attack power lead, so that's a pretty big damage boost to the rest of your team. Alright, so actually I think that's pretty much all the units I wanted to cover. Actually that took a lot longer than I thought as well, but anyway, I hope that is helpful for Fire Rifts. So if you're having any problems or you want to ask any questions, as usual, feel free to leave me a comment and I'll answer you as soon as possible. So thanks guys again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!